She thought it was just another chance at love, a blind date that could either heal her loneliness or break her heart again. But when the black woman walked into that upscale restaurant, whispers started, eyes turned, and cruel laughter filled the air. They mocked her before she even sat down, ridiculing her appearance and worth. Yet what no one expected was the man across the table, a wealthy single dad, a CEO, who saw something everyone else was too blind to notice. And by the end of the night, his shocking proposal left the entire room speechless. Amara had spent years putting others before herself. Between balancing 2 jobs and caring for her younger sister, her own happiness had always taken a back seat. Friends encouraged her to take a leap of faith, to finally open her heart again. Hesitant but hopeful, she agreed to a blind date arranged by a co-worker. It was set at a high-end restaurant, a place where polished shoes and tailored suits were the norm, and where she knew she might stand out for all the wrong reasons. Walking in that evening, she wore her best dress, one she had carefully ironed hours before. Her heart raced with every step toward the reservation desk as whispers began to ripple through the crowded dining room. Some heads turned with curiosity, others with thinly veiled disdain. She could feel the weight of every stare. For Amara, it wasn't the first time she had been judged by her skin color before anyone even knew her story. The host guided her toward the table where her date was waiting. She braced herself, uncertain whether this man, a stranger until now, would be just like the others who underestimated her. Across the table sat a man in a sharp suit, his confidence undeniable, his presence commanding attention. What Amara didn't know yet was that he wasn't just any man. He was a CEO, a single father carrying his own share of burdens, searching for something real beneath the layers of status and wealth. In that moment, 2 worlds were about to collide, hers, scarred by judgment, and his, hidden behind power. And neither of them realized just how much this one evening would change the course of their lives. As Amara took her seat, she noticed the subtle shift in the room. A few diners leaned closer to whisper, others didn't bother hiding their smirks. To them she was out of place, a black woman in a restaurant designed for the wealthy elite. The sting of their judgment pressed on her chest, but she straightened her back and forced herself to breathe steadily. She had been through harder moments in life, yet the humiliation of being silently mocked never lost its sharpness. Her date, Daniel, greeted her politely, though his expression carried traces of surprise. He hadn't expected the woman sitting across from him, though he quickly disguised it behind his well-practiced charm. He was a CEO after all, a man used to controlling rooms, not being caught off guard by them. The waiter arrived, but even he wasn't immune to the atmosphere. He addressed Daniel with a rehearsed warmth, and then turned to Amara with a dismissive glance, barely meeting her eyes. When she placed her order, he scribbled it down hastily, his disinterest as loud as the laughter echoing from a nearby table. The group seated behind them, a cluster of young professionals in expensive suits, began to chuckle more openly. Their mocking voices carried easily across the polished hardwood floor. "She must be lost," one whispered loudly enough for half the room to hear. Another leaned back, pretending to be confused. "Maybe she's here to clean the tables, not sit at one." Amara's cheeks flushed, but she refused to lower her gaze. For years she had been taught to stay silent, to not draw attention, to let the insults pass like storms. But tonight was different. Tonight, she was being judged not only by strangers but in front of a man who might decide her worth in just a few hours. Daniel, sitting across from her, felt the tension, but didn't immediately intervene. He was calculating, observing. On the surface, he played the part of an unaffected businessman, sipping his wine and letting the conversation flow. But beneath his calm demeanor, something stirred. He had built walls around himself after years of betrayal and opportunistic relationships. Yet here was a woman enduring cruelty with quiet strength, refusing to shrink even as the room tried to diminish her. As the evening went on, Amara began to share pieces of her story. She spoke of working tirelessly to support her younger sister's education, of balancing jobs that demanded far more than they paid. Her voice carried no bitterness, only quiet pride. Daniel listened intently, surprised by how her resilience mirrored something he longed for in his own life, authenticity, but the cruelty around them didn't relent. When Amara excused herself briefly to the restroom, one of the nearby women sneered, "That CEO must be desperate." Another laughed, "Or maybe he's just slumming it for the night." Their words dripped with venom, as though her presence alone was an insult to their exclusivity. Daniel's jaw tightened. He had tolerated the whispers long enough, but his instincts told him to wait, to see how Amara handled the storm. And when she returned, her chin was lifted even higher, her stride steady, as if daring the room to try and break her spirit again. The night was far from over, and the room's judgment hung heavy. What none of them knew, however, was that Daniel was on the verge of making a decision that would silence every mocking voice, a choice that would reveal more about his heart than his fortune ever could. The laughter at the nearby table grew louder, emboldened by Amara's quiet dignity. One man leaned back in his chair and sneered. "Guess the CEO wanted charity tonight." His friends erupted in laughter that rolled across the restaurant like thunder. Amara's hands trembled under the table, her fork resting untouched on the plate. For a moment, her vision blurred with unshed tears. She had been strong all night, carrying herself with grace, but the relentless cruelty was suffocating. She thought about leaving, about sparing herself from further humiliation, yet something deep inside whispered, "No. Not this time." Then Daniel pushed his chair back. The sound of wood scraping against marble silenced the laughter. Every head turned as he stood, tall, commanding, radiating authority that came not just from wealth but from a life spent commanding respect. Without a word he walked to Amara's side. At first she thought he might be about to end the evening early, to confirm everyone's cruel assumptions, but instead he reached into his jacket pocket, pulled out a small velvet box and went down on one knee. Gasps rippled through the restaurant. The mocking faces froze in shock, their smirks replaced with stunned silence. Daniel's voice carried with quiet strength, each word deliberate. "This woman is the most extraordinary person I've ever met. Her strength, her courage, her heart, they put this entire room to shame, and if the world can't see her worth, then I'll make sure it never forgets. Amara, will you marry me?" Amara's breath caught in her throat. For a heartbeat the world seemed to stop. The very people who had laughed at her now sat frozen, their own arrogance turned into humiliation. She felt tears spill down her cheeks, not from the cruelty she had endured, but from the overwhelming power of this moment. The restaurant was silent, waiting for her answer, and in that silence, Amara realized the truth. This wasn't just about love. This was about dignity, about defying every cruel whisper that had ever tried to define her. Amara's lips quivered as the weight of Daniel's words sank into her heart. The same room that had mocked her now sat in stunned silence, every cruel smirk wiped away. For the first time in her life she realized that she was no longer standing alone. Her voice, though shaky, carried through the restaurant. "Yes, yes, I will." The words ignited a rush of applause from the few who had watched quietly, people who had never joined in the cruelty but now found the courage to cheer. Daniel rose, slipping the ring onto her finger with steady hands. The sparkle of the diamond caught the light, but it was nothing compared to the radiance in Amara's tear-filled eyes. The laughter that had once threatened to crush her now felt like a distant memory, insignificant against the roar of her newfound dignity. The mockers lowered their gazes, shrinking into their seats, confronted not only with their own cruelty but with the undeniable truth: love and respect had won. Later that evening as they left the restaurant, Amara felt something shift deep within her. The stairs no longer cut her down, instead she walked taller, knowing she had faced the worst and had risen above it. Daniel walked by her side, not as a savior but as a man who recognized the brilliance of a woman the world too often overlooked. But the moment wasn't just personal, it was symbolic. It spoke to every woman who had been silenced by ridicule, every black girl told she was less than, every soul bruised by prejudice. Amara's story became more than a dinner gone wrong. It became a testament to resilience, to the power of dignity in the face of hate, and to the truth that love sees beyond skin, beyond status, beyond ignorance, and perhaps most importantly, it left a question echoing in the minds of everyone who watched in that restaurant and beyond. How many lives have we diminished with our laughter, and how many hearts could we lift if we chose respect instead? Because in the end, racism doesn't just wound the victim, it exposes the poverty of those who carry it, and when love steps forward, bold and unashamed, it shatters hate in ways words alone never could. As Amara looked down at the ring glimmering on her hand, she smiled through her tears. She hadn't just gained a partner, she had gained a victory, one that no mockery could ever erase.